What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today I wanted to do a video on some pretty interesting stuff I found out about Sundance's grenades and why we're actually using them wrong most of the time. Just the other day I've actually purchased 2042 on an alternate account on Origin, and this means that I can now actually test things in a controlled environment. As you can see on screen here, I'm actually controlling both of these players, and I'm in just a portal server with only 2 players in it, and it means that moving forward I'm going to be able to test a lot of different stuff on the battlefield without the painstaking trouble of having to try and test this stuff in an actual game where people are shooting at you and stuff like that. And so you guys can expect plenty more content like this on the way. I'm going to be able to do weapon breakdowns and break down all the stats of every single item in the game pretty much, and on top of that I can also test out a bunch of stuff like this. So definitely expect plenty of content like this in the future, and if you guys do enjoy this type of content, sort of figuring out certain elements of the game, then definitely hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications. We are gunning for 30,000 subscribers by the end of 2022, so if you are new to the channel, then definitely hit that subscribe button. So anyway, getting into it, obviously Sundance's grenades are a little bit busted at the moment. I'm sure any of you guys who have used Sundance even, for a few games here or there, you probably know that the anti-armor grenades are essentially useless at the moment. For some reason they seem to prioritize air vehicles. Even if you're aiming directly at a tank, for example, they just sort of fly off to the other side of the map and chase down a jet that they're obviously never going to catch, and so they are essentially useless at this point. And even when they do hit the ground vehicles or even the air vehicles as well, they don't actually deal all that much damage. So I'm actually going to go through why they're not dealing too much damage when they do actually hit, and then I also wanted to go through some of the damage comparisons from the anti-tank grenades, the scatter grenades, and then just the regular grenades that anyone can carry, because like I said, I did find out some pretty interesting stuff about these grenades. So the first issue with the anti-armor grenades in terms of why they're not actually dealing too much damage is simply because they are actually locking onto the tank or the whatever you're throwing them at, and even if you aim for a weak spot, obviously on a tank for example, the back of the tank is going to deal more damage. Even if you're aiming for those locations, the tracking of those grenades actually kind of throws that off, and it more often than not actually ends up hitting in an area of the tank or the vehicle that isn't going to deal as much damage as you probably want it to. As you guys can see in some of these clips, I'm throwing these anti-armor grenades at the back of the tank, hoping that it's going to hit that sort of weak spot in the back. However, the tracking kind of takes over a little bit and actually tends to hit on the side or on the top of the tank, which results in it actually dealing less damage. The reason I think this is happening is because I think the grenades are actually just sort of targeting the center of the tank. So unless you're directly behind the tank, it will essentially veer off towards the center rather than directly where it was going. So if you're at like a 45-degree angle behind the tank, for example, and you throw it right at the back of the tank, it seems like it slightly veers off to the right and sort of hits the track of the tank, or maybe even the top of the tank sometimes, and that is causing them to deal a lot less damage than they probably should be. With some of the other anti-armor grenades in previous Battlefield games like Battlefield 1 and Battlefield 5, they obviously had no tracking on them, so if you got behind a tank and threw, the anti-tank bundle at a tank, it would pretty much hit where you were aiming, and then it would deal more damage if you hit it in the right spot, and that essentially came down to your own skill. If you were good enough at aiming, they would obviously hit where you wanted them to, whereas in this game, even if you're aiming at the absolute perfect spot, the tracking can kind of throw that off, and so that is a big part of why they're probably not dealing as much damage as we all want them to. As for why they're actually prioritizing the air vehicles over the ground vehicles, I think that is just a bug. I don't think that's actually meant to be in the game, or at least I hope not. I do think that will end up being fixed, so hopefully they do get around to that in the next couple of patches, but that's obviously just making it even worse. If you throw it at the tank and there's a chopper flying by, it seems to just chase after the chopper even though you're obviously not aiming at the chopper. But like I said, I think that's just a bug, so at least that should be fixable in the near future. Now moving on to the damage comparisons between the anti-tank grenades, the scatter grenades, and the actual just regular grenades that everyone has. I'm going to show you guys some footage of me throwing each of these grenades, and I'm actually going to show you guys the enemy's health in the bottom corner. I have recorded both sides of this. I recorded on the Xbox and on the PC, so I'm going to overlay the enemy's health down in the bottom right just so you can see exactly how much damage these grenades are dealing. For the anti-armor grenades, when it seems to hit in just a regular spot, this seems to be essentially anywhere on the tank except for the rear, they tend to deal 17 damage per hit. Or if you do actually manage to land one right in that perfect sort of sweet spot in the back of the tank, then they seem to deal about 22 damage instead. So even if you hit 2 of those, that's only 44 damage, and they're meant to be, they're literally called anti-armor grenades, and yet they only deal pretty much 40 damage when you've used both of them. So obviously that is just not very good at all. They do feel really weak when you're using them, and on top of that, obviously like I said, they don't even seem to track the right target half the time. So in my opinion, the anti-armor grenades are almost useless unless you do use them them in the absolute perfect situation, which a lot of the time is even out of your control depending on where it hits on the tank. Now, like I said, if you actually hit both of those anti-armor grenades in the sweet spot, they deal 44 damage overall to the tank. However, in this clip here, you can see that I've actually thrown just the regular scatter grenades at the back of the tank, and both of these combined to deal 50 damage instead of 40. So the regular scatter grenades, which are meant to be for infantry, not for vehicles, they actually deal more damage to a tank than the regular anti-armor grenades. And obviously they don't have tracking, so if you throw it and then the tank drives away, then obviously they're just going to not deal any damage to the tank, whereas at least the anti-armor ones, they will follow that tank down, provided they chase the right target anyway. So the scatter grenades do come with, you know, somewhat of a weakness in that they can't track the tank, but at the end of the day, they still deal more damage, and they're not really meant to, in my opinion. They're meant to be just for infantry, and the anti-armor grenades are obviously meant to be for the vehicles in the game. So I found that to be really interesting, and that is kind of changing the way that I've been playing Sundance lately. I've actually barely been using the anti-armor grenades because they do feel pretty much useless at this point, especially now that I've figured out that the scatter grenades actually deal more damage. And the thing with the scatter grenades too is that it seems like no matter where they hit on the tank, they actually deal essentially the same or more damage than the anti-armor grenades. So you also have to be less accurate with those scatter grenades, and to me they just seem like they're actually better for taking out tanks than the actual anti-armor grenades. Now, just lastly, I also wanted to show off something that I think has been massively underrated in the community so far, and that is the EMP grenades. Both the regular EMP grenades that anyone can carry, as well as especially Sundance's EMP grenades, because I don't think people actually realize how powerful these things are. When you throw an EMP grenade, and let's just take Sundance's EMP grenades for example, when you throw those at a tank and they hit the tank, they don't really deal any damage, but what they do is they essentially cause the tank to be unable to shoot at all, and they also can't use their countermeasures, so they can't pop smoke or anything like that. All they can do is essentially drive back and forth, and obviously that makes them a lot weaker than if they can use their weapons. So personally, for taking out vehicles, I actually think that combining the EMP grenades with, you know, C5 or even the M5 recoilless, I think that combination is actually much better than any of those grenades, because if you hit that tank with an EMP grenade, it's going to cause the tank to essentially be useless, and it's only going to be able to drive away. And even if you don't get to blow it up with the C5 or the rocket launcher for example, it's still going to have to get away from the location, and so even in a worst case scenario, you're still forcing that tank to get out of that location and essentially get to a safe spot. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention as well, guys. You can see in this clip here that I've actually thrown the EMP grenades at the tank, and it actually disables the tank for 14 seconds, which is actually a very long time. This is of course Sundance's EMP. I think the regular EMP grenades are maybe 8 seconds of being disabled, but either way, that gives you a long time to sort of get close to that tank. It can't really do anything other than run you over, and if you come at it from the side, obviously it's not going to be able to pivot in a fast enough way to actually run you over, and then unless it runs away, you can just throw down some C5 and essentially one-shot that tank. So like I said, I think the EMPs are definitely very underrated. That is going to do it for this one though, guys. I just found that to be pretty interesting, and I wanted to share it with you guys because, at least for me, I was definitely using those grenades wrong. So I thought I would share that with you guys, and hopefully that can help with taking out some of those vehicles, because we all know that the vehicles in this game are definitely pretty overwhelming at times. Like I said, now that I own the game on 2 different accounts, I can actually do these tests pretty much any time. So if there's anything you guys want me to test out, then definitely let me know down in the comments. Moving forward, a lot of the content on this channel is going to be a lot of stuff like this, a lot of random little testing, as well as I'm going to be doing complete weapon breakdowns with every single stat that you guys could need to know. And yeah, there's going to be a lot of content like this on the way. So like I said, if you guys enjoy this type of content, then definitely be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications so you don't miss out on any upcoming 2042 content. If you want to support the content that I make here on YouTube, then consider becoming a channel member. But with that being said, thank you all very much for watching. You guys have a great day, and I'll see you all out there on the battlefield.